Reclaim is a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter, with your host, Thais Sky. Together, we will explore the questions of what does it look like to reclaim our sovereignty, our worthiness, our voices as women in this messy world. No topics are barred as we offer roundtable discussions on life, spirituality, politics, and what it means to be a woman in the modern age. Let's do this. Hello, everybody. Thais Sky here. Welcome to my closet. And by closet, I mean my podcast, but I'm sitting in my closet, so it's like the same thing. Happy Tuesday. I hope you're having an incredible day. Actually, I shouldn't say happy Tuesday. That's very presumptuous of me. I don't know when you're listening to this podcast. Okay, so whatever day you are listening, I hope you're having an incredible of it. I have a couple announcements before I get into today's conversation. One, big news, peoples. Doors are closing for my group program, Worthy Women Rise. Like, this is it. This is your invitation. There's no more time to waste. If you are interested in learning more about how to reclaim your worth, embody your truth, and rise into your most expressed self, this is your call. Worthy Women Rise is all about how to get out of your own way so you can take up greater space in the world. We talk about belonging and worthiness. We talk about self-expression. We talk about emotions. We talk about sovereignty and the feminine and divine leadership. And we talk about sacred union between body and heart and mind. We talk about how to embody who we truly were born to be. This program is a 4-month quest. I'm calling it an internal and external exploration. And it's designed to support you overcome comparativeness and perfectionism and debilitating inner critic and self-doubt and the fears that are preventing you from truly being who you were born to be, right? Like just being you, so that you can start that business, so that you can express your truths to the people who matter, so that you can take a stand for things that are uncomfortable, so that you can just really be worthy. I mean, God damn it. Like, don't you think that the world would be revolutionarily different if we all believed that our worth wasn't tied to money, if our worth wasn't tied to external validation, if our worth wasn't tied to how we looked? Like, imagine what that is costing you to believe that you are inadequate, to believe that you shouldn't do what you want to do. The narratives, the belief systems that have been indoctrinated within us, it's time for us to change that shit. Okay, this is it. I don't believe that we have another second to waste, because when we look back, what do we want to think that we did? Do we want to think that we were in debilitated mode, I should say? No, of course not. We want to say that we lived our greatest life. So when are we going to do the inner work required to live our greatest life? When are we going to take our internal world seriously? Yeah. This program is what I consider level 2. Okay, so level 1 work is entering the spiritual understanding, entering self-responsibility, entering this idea of the light, of mantras and visualizations, and you're starting to understand how you can change your mind and it changes your life, and you're starting to understand how you have a responsibility over the results that you get in your life. Okay, now this is level 2, which means now I'm going to offer you tools that are not the tools that you get when you're chasing the light, but tools that you get when you immerse in the dark. As I say, the light, saved me from drowning, but it was the dark that taught me how to swim. And the dark is what is going to teach us how to enter our depths in a way that transforms us, that allows us to hold a container of our lives so we can have genuine connection and authentic relating, and a way of being with ourselves that's not filled with self-hate and annihilating thoughts. So this is the level 2. This is your invitation to go deeper into this work. worthywomenrise.com. You can learn more using the link for the show notes. You can learn more by going to worthywomenrise.com, but your application must be in Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific in order for you to be considered for the program. So that's it. This is it. This is your call. Are you going to be joining us? I really hope so. In other news, or should I say 2, I'm going to be speaking at a couple events in the coming weeks. Oh my gosh, it's getting to the final countdown. I'm going to be speaking in Los Angeles at my friend Ruby Freeman's event, March 2nd through the 4th. Again, all the information for this is in the show notes. Ruby's event is for entrepreneurs who are ready to step into thought leadership and needs that kind of kick in the butt required to get you thinking and being and operating in a different capacity in your business. And I'm going to be in Georgia. When is it? March 27th through March 29th for your Leadership Recipe Live, hosted by McKenna Held. This conference is for the social justice warriors. It's for the entrepreneurs. It's for people who want to know how to bring social justice principles into their work so they are more impactful and cause less harm. So they are more grounded, so their work is more meaningful in the world. And you can learn about that, like I said, in the show notes. And if you are going to be at one of these two events, please let me know so that I can make a mental note that I want to come and give you a hug and say hello. Okay, well, this is kind of embarrassing. I just recorded that whole section of the podcast, the whole previous, 8 minutes, and I realized I didn't have my mic synced up to GarageBand. I had my headphone mic, so I'm so sorry for that lower quality and for any background noise you caught on there. I don't want to re-record that because that stuff came right out of my heart, and I don't, you know what it's like, right? You don't want to just do that over again. It removes the authenticity there. So, okay, well, we're just going to have to deal with it. This is imperfection in action. And also, speaking of imperfection in action, what I wanted to talk to you about before I bring Bethany on is this idea of imperfection and the idea of self-expression and expressing yourself imperfectly in the world. So I hosted a workshop last week called the Visibility Workshop, which you can still get on my website. You can just go to tayyasky.com/workshop. And someone asked me, I'm brand new to the industry of coaching and I want to start coaching, and I'm having a hard time writing the copy of my sales page, or not sales page, on my website because I have never coached before and I feel like I'm being like a fraud, like trying to sell myself. I've been a teacher for the past 20 years or however many years, and do you have any advice for me? And I get that faking it to making it, like faking the copy, faking your grandiosity makes the most sense, right? Because you've never done this before, but you want people to hire you. So you immediately go to, well, I'll just pretend like I've been doing this forever. And then, at some point I will have been doing this forever and it won't be fake anymore. I have a different approach. I think true revolutionary leadership is being willing to go before you feel ready, do it imperfectly, and own that imperfection. I think we're seeing leadership, we think of thought leaders and, any type of leader as having to have all the answers and having to be perfect and having to put yourself up in a pedestal. And in order to put yourself up in a pedestal, that means that people have to be below you. And that kind of vertical leadership style is very patriarchal and old-fashioned, and it doesn't fit into the narrative of what it could look like to step into a true horizontal style leadership where we're all equal and we're all walking each other home and we're all just supporting one another and serving one another and leading one another in that journey. So if we truly step into that form of leadership, that means that you have to go before you're ready. It means that it doesn't have to be perfect. And it means that as you know better, you will do better. And as you share your imperfect journey, you will inspire people to go into their imperfect journey. Just as I'm hoping that through my imperfection here on this podcast, that I will show you that you can be having these uncomfortable conversations and mess up and do better before you're ready. I think readiness is an illusion. We wait until at some point in the future where we don't feel unworthy for us to begin. But that point won't ever happen because unworthiness is just a part of life. And it's actually just about learning how to navigate the unworthiness that matters. And that's what I teach in Worthy Women Rise. And okay, here's the point. Take the risk. Risk on yourself. Risk vulnerability. Risk being seen. Risk your perfect mask that you've put on. Risk it all, because what you will find on the other end of that is genuine connection, is a way of being with one another that is life affirming. You'll find that you'll be able to be with yourself in a deeper way, but it's got to start with you. You've got to start. And so I told this woman on the visibility workshop I told her, I was like, instead of writing this copy as if you were perfect, as if you're already there, what if you were to write this copy from where exactly you are? That maybe the coaching may be new to you, but you bring a very special skill set to coaching from your background that most people can't bring. And that your unique perspective is what's going to allow people to experience the breakthrough that you can serve them with. Like, what if you were to write from the viewpoint of, I'm on this journey with you, and I have these tools that I've accumulated from my teaching experience to guide you on the journey, as opposed to, I'm perfect, follow me, and, I've done this for a million years, and here's all the testimonials of people that I just made up because they don't exist, right? Like, this is what we can do here. We got a real opportunity to infuse who we really are in every step of our journey. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be anywhere else to be ready and to be worthy and to feel good about your work. Okay, so that's my spiel for you. I hope this serves you in some capacity. And again, final call, if you think that really doing the deeper work around your wounding and around understanding how your mother and your father and your ancestral and cultural narratives are keeping you stuck, and you're ready to peel the onion and get to the core of who you are so that you can express that fully into the world, I invite you to consider joining Worthy Women Rise. Doors close Thursday night. Okay. So, Bethany Webster. I fucking love Bethany Webster. This conversation was so good. And when you're having an interview with somebody and you reached out to them, because I reached out to Bethany, you don't know what you're going to get. But the minute I had Bethany on for this interview, I just felt such kindredship. Like, I just knew that she was real and raw and was going to bring everything to the table. And she did. And this conversation is just amazing. So let me read to you Bethany's bio. Bethany Webster is a writer, transformational coach, international teacher, and what you call a midwife of the heart. Her work is focused on helping women heal the mother wound so that they can step into their full power and potential. She teaches workshops, an online course, and offers a coaching program for women leaders. Bethany offers free resources, articles, and interviews at motherwound.com. And as you're listening to this conversation that we have about the mother wound, about self-responsibility, about anger, I want you to think about your own wounding for a minute, okay? I want you to think about where you may not have looked critically at the deeper places within you because you're scared of what it may mean, because you're scared of blaming people, because you're scared of what it looks like to take responsibility in a healthy way and not in the unhealthy way that we talk about in this interview. You're in for a super duper treat. Let's bring Bethany on. Hello, Bethany. Welcome to Reclaim. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you.
I'm a big follower of your work. I love the conversations you have around the mother wound, and that's where I want to begin, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. But before we even do that, I just want to say your work has inspired me and given me so much permission to get more, I don't want to say philosophical, but more meaty in the conversation of wounding. I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about psychology and we're talking about like the human construct, it's very light stuff. And seeing your work in the world and how you are so fierce and fearless and going into some pretty difficult topics has given me so much permission to say, you know what, I need to go there too. So I want to just say thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome to hear. And I think that's where we're going. Like, I've definitely had a couple of women in my life who helped model that for me. And it's such an empowering journey to be on, to go into these kind of shadowy places and really flesh them out. And it's just such a more rich, nourishing journey to kind of dive right in. And so I really love your work for the same reason. I see you talking about things that are really challenging, but the stuff that we unearth in the process is like so nourishing and lasting.
Yes, yes. So let's start with why the mother wound? Like, what is this? For people who have never heard of the mother wound before, tell us a little bit about it and your journey developing it.
Totally. The mother wound is a term that's like been around. It's been talked about here and there over the past like 40 years, but it's never been really fleshed out in any great detail as thoroughly as I flesh it out. And this work on the mother wound is just a product of my own organic personal journey of healing this wound. But in a nutshell, the mother wound is really a wound in us that we have as women living in patriarchal cultures. And it has to do with any, limiting beliefs or concepts about ourselves that are really the product of our relationships with our mothers. So any painful dynamics in that relationship that have impacted how we see ourselves, how we see the world, how we feel about our bodies, how we feel about our potential. So it really comes down to the way our mothers treated us, for better or for worse, really impacts how we treat ourselves. And that's why it's such a foundational issue, especially for us as women right now, wanting to really respond to a lot of these major issues that are happening in the world. I also talk about other layers to the mother wound, not just personal, but there's a cultural mother wound as well. It really has to do with the atmosphere that we live in as women, that we are less than, and how it's coming at us from every angle, from our religions, our governments, our media, as well as through our families. And when it passes through our actual mother line, it does particular insidious damage in the sense that we tend to bond and internalize these messages as part of our sense of self. So it makes them quite entrenched. And then there's also the spiritual level of the mother wound, which I like to say that the mother wound is kind of like a barrier between us and life itself. So it impacts on a spiritual level our ability to really trust life, to trust that we're safe. And so as you can see, this is like a big wound, but my belief is that as each of us works with our own personal bit of this collective wound, we start to help to heal the collective and help humanity culturally and evolutionarily step into expanded consciousness. So I think as women, when we talk about women's empowerment, when we talk about self-worth, when we talk about the divine feminine, when we talk about self-actualization, it's essential that we include the mother wound in that conversation. Otherwise, it remains the ideas of feminism, the goals of equality, the goals of women's empowerment remain in the realm of the intellect and in the realm of fantasy. And I'm really concerned with making this our living reality. And so it's uncomfortable. We have to look at this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm almost like a poster child for your work in a sense, because it was December of 2016. So after Trump had been elected, Trump's election woke many white women up. It certainly woke me up in many ways, but it wasn't the catalyst that truly woke me up. It was like one crack at the shell. But what really helped me break open to understand my privilege, understand my reality, and how I was going to start to support the collective was I had a huge breakthrough in my mother wound. I had a huge breakthrough about my relationship with my mother and how I'm an immigrant daughter. And in many ways, I feel like I'm responsible for her and her well-being. And I recognize that I had to set a certain boundary with her. And it's interesting when I talk about it, because it's not like it just had like a sudden epiphany and that was it, right? It was a culmination of 10 years of deeper work, but it was just a flick of a moment. I had that moment of, I have to develop new boundaries around my mom. And the minute I did that, Bethany, my entire life changed. It was really cool because then I was able to actually deal with my privilege, actually deal with my deeper wounding without the self-annihilation, without the guilt, without the shutdown, without the collapse.
Oh my God, you brilliantly encapsulated what I talk about, which is like when we can, take empowered action in the realm of mother, whether it's, setting boundaries with her, speaking our truth to her, being willing to be rejected by her. if we can do that in the realm of our mothers, it liberates us to do it in every other area. It's like the field of mother is so powerful. So any empowered steps that we take there, however small, automatically liberate all these other areas. So thank you for sharing that. It's a brilliant example of the power of this deep work.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, how if we don't do this work, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts around it, what I've seen for me is that when I continue to believe that I need to get my mom to love me in the way I need to be loved, and I continue that cycle of, no, you're letting me down, you need to love me in this way, not only does it keep that relationship very tightly wound and very painful for both of us, but it prevents me from actually being able to be with the woman that she is. And if we can't be with the person as they are, how can we possibly actually love them or allow them to love us in the way that they love?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. A lot of women are walking around, myself included, for a long time, walking around with this idea that I can't be happy until I get my mother to finally see me.
Yeah.
And not realizing that I was kind of projecting what I call the impossible dream onto, I need to get this new degree, or I need to get the man in my life, or I got to make this much money, or I have to do X, Y, Z in order to be happy. That was all just subtle emanations of this impossible dream that when I am X, then my mother will love me, So yeah, it's a powerful process of kind of bringing this inner child inside of us out of the frozen trauma of the past and into the safety of the present. So dealing with what happened, what was missed, taking responsibility for that, and grieving that, really facing the magnitude of how we suffered in that relationship, and allowing that to be okay, and then taking empowered action. It removes that projection off of our moms. And whether the relationship improves or whether it doesn't is not the point so much as that we encounter, what's really going on under the surface. And it can happen either way.
Yeah. In the self-development, self-help world, we talk about take 100% responsibility. And I see that the shadow side of that is that we take on responsibility of other people's pain upon us, like the pain of our mother and her inherent pain. And we take that on as, well, I'm 100% responsible for anything that happens to me. Therefore, if my mother wounds me and hurts me, it must be somehow my fault.
Yeah, that's a dangerous, there's partial truth there, and there's a dangerous conflation happening. So for example, the way I like to tell, what I've seen is exactly what you're saying. Most of us take too much responsibility because we live in a world as women that tells us that we're responsible for the emotional realm and that we need to, take it on. We need to be the bigger person.
Yes.
And that's a trap. That's a trap. And I think where we're going now, and where I've seen the most transformation is, and where we need to go even more, is to actually withdraw that which is not our responsibility and place it back to others. So for example, in the context of our mothers, when we were children, we were not responsible. We were dependents. We were vulnerable, completely vulnerable with our mothers and fathers, particularly our mothers. And our mothers were the ones that were responsible for us as children. Put that aside for a second. Alongside that is the fact that as children, we automatically take up responsibility. So for example, if a mother and a child are having an interaction and there's like a break in the attachment bond, something bad happens and the child feels alone, abandoned, or whatever. As children, we automatically assume it's our fault because it's cognitively, we can't process that our mothers might be unwell or unable to care for us in that moment. So we have to blame ourselves. It's kind of like the only way a child can feel a sense of control over its environment is to think I'm bad.
Yeah.
So one of the problems is that a lot of people are walking around thinking I'm bad, I'm not good enough. And so it can feed into what you're saying, like taking on too much responsibility. And so part of the healing the mother wound is actually taking in the magnitude of how much we suffered and that it wasn't our fault.
Yeah.
Do anything wrong to deserve it. That our parents, so we have to kind of we're not blaming our mothers at all. That's not what this is about. But it is about, allowing ourselves to feel anger about what we went through.
Oh,
Like
that's
for
so
example,
fascinating. Wait, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just so fascinating how you even had to say that. You even had to say, we're not blaming, and I see this on your copy, on your website. You have to like make it clear, like, don't take responsibility, but we're not blaming the mother either. And it's so interesting how we immediately go there of if I'm not taking responsibility, that means it's someone else's fault. That means I'm blaming them. That means I'm the victim. That means that they're bad and I'm good. It's the same dichotomy. It's the same thing, except switched, reversed.
exactly. People automatically shut down this, and I did for a long time too. I don't want to blame my mother. I don't want to, dig up all these painful emotions. But these painful emotions that we have stored inside drive a lot of our present problems.
Yeah.
So, this pent up anger that we might be feeling, the pent up grief about whatever happened when we were children, it doesn't go away when we ignore it or avoid it. So the point is to really allow ourselves the time and space and the permission to really look at how we suffered as children and to feel compassion for that little child that we were, and to get information about why we might have the challenges that we do. So this is part of taking responsibility for what is ours, which as adults to process, our childhood histories. Because if we don't process it, we will contaminate our relationships with it, whether they're our spousal relationships with our own kids, in work situations, in our sisterhood circles. The mother wound comes up in all these places. If we don't kind of work through it directly. So it takes time to get there and it takes time to work through it. But ultimately, with each step and with each layer that we work through, we get new possibilities and new choices that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see this as adults, we are adults, but so many of us are running our lives as immature, emotionally illiterate children in adult bodies. And so in the same way, we also, I feel, do have to experience compassion and an understanding of what we can't control based on the systems that have let us down, and based on the government and the ways in which we aren't supported as human beings for our own well-being.
Right. Exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah.
And a lot of the problems that we have in the world right now are the problems of projection.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with each other. Really, we're seeing each other as kind of stand-ins for all these old stories that we haven't worked through.
Yeah.
So, a lot of us are wondering, wow, there's so many problems, especially for women, like all kinds of issues. And yet the solutions, I think, are going to come as each of us really works through our histories, which sounds paradoxical. It sounds kind of counterintuitive. We have to do both. We have to do the social justice work and the outer work of changing society, but we also have to do the inner work, because if we don't do them both at the same time and they don't inform each other, then we're just replaying the programs that we've inherited, and nothing substantial is going to happen. And we need something substantial to happen, right?
Yeah, yes, we do. I would love to know, because your work is subtle and the conversations of wounds, scares people. The conversation of sitting with uncomfortable emotion can be very scary. I know, because I see this often, this desire to chase the fun stuff, the money and the travel and the chasing the light versus going into our depth. And I'm curious how you've navigated this challenge, as a business owner, but also as someone who's done the work herself.
Totally. That's such a great question. The kind of the way that I got into this was like, I was in college and I was chasing the light. I was in yoga and I was taking yoga. I was devouring books on meditation and spirituality. And I was always a spiritual kid from a really early age. And then I had a wake up call. I got pregnant, one night stand. I got pregnant, had an abortion. And I was like, I need to figure things out. Like, this is serious now. I have to figure out what I'm doing. So I got into therapy, and I totally still spiritual bypassed for years. I started to get myself cleaned up in terms of finances and basic kind of life stuff. But I still was under this belief, this false illusion that if I just keep becoming spiritual and getting more degrees, then I'm not going to have to deal with this history, that it will just cancel itself out. I really thought that. And then, continuing on in my journey, I realized, wow, it's actually what I'm realizing is that this stuff I'm avoiding is playing out in every single area. And I'm actually wasting time. I'm kind of postponing what I actually want by avoiding it. So it was kind of through the process of elimination of trying everything else and then realizing, I have to work on this. And then, so I did. And a lot of other things happened in the middle there. But when I was like working through it, similar to what you described, it was really painful and really hard. And at the same time, everything started to change into like really feeling solid, things really happening on their own. The things that I wanted were naturally coming to me the more that I really committed. And for me, it became down to like this place of integrity.
Yeah.
Like, if I really want to have the life I really want to have, I need to do this. And also, I think I was driven a lot by curiosity. My training is more in social psychology, so I'm not a therapist. I'm kind of trained in research. So I've always been kind of looking at issues of race, class, and gender, and social patterning and intergroup relations. So I've kind of always looked at things at a cultural group level. And then combined with doing the deeper inner work on myself, I was like, this is the work. And then years and years of, my family kind of imploding. My mom and I had to go no contact. She kind of disowned me when I was like, I can't be your emotional caretaker. Like, I need to have my own, we need to have a balanced relationship. And she was like, my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. So I had to go through kind of that whole thing. And what I found was, as hard as it is, as painful, it was an opening to the pain. And by having support in my life through a very brilliant therapist that I've had for now 20 years, consistently, I think that's one of the reasons why I feel like this is so important is, like going through it is so challenging, but it brings the real stuff into your life that matters. Yeah. You don't have to chase, these external superficial things. They just kind of come into your life as you commit to doing the deeper work. And I haven't, my goal is to help our culture get there, because I think that's what's people are hiding because they're scared. But I'd like to see the conversation shift into like, let's create a culture of self-reflection where we're like looking at this stuff and it's normalized. It's not like, oh, there's something wrong with you because you're in therapy. It's more like, oh, this is like the way to live. This is an adventure. It's not about getting to this end point where we're all healed and we're all rich or something. It's more like, that's not really what we want. I think what we really want is an experience of our own power and true, meaningful, quality connections with ourselves, like embracing ourselves in our realness, including the messiness, but really feeling lovable from that place and embracing other people in their realness. But in order to get there, we have to embrace the pain.
Yes.
So, in my experience, embracing the pain, opening to it rather than avoiding it or running through it, I think is the single biggest thing. Learning how to open to my own pain rather than shut it down, and realizing that I can withstand that and survive that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have yet to experience pain that annihilates me. Every time I have a session with my therapist, who I've had for over 10 years now, it's interesting because I go into the session with her and I can feel the abyss, the black hole that has always been a part of me, that place that's just like feels so hopeless. And slowly over the years, we've walked closer and closer and we've touched it. We've dipped our toes in it. And sometimes it does feel overwhelming and I'm like, I can't handle it. And then we don't. And then in other sessions I get close and I'm like, you know what? Like, there's nothing scary here. And I know that the answer to anything we want really is by jumping in, going into that black hole safely and with care. Maybe not necessarily just going all in right away. But it's really cool when we see again and again that we can touch the pain and it won't annihilate us. It won't kill us. And it actually allows us to experience joy and that, what you said, that connection and that realness in such a deeper way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because if we can't meet our own pain, then we can't meet the pain of other people. As white women right now, I feel like we have so much to do with encountering the pain of other people, people of color, and so many others that we've oppressed, without even realizing it. And because we've been cut off from our own pain. So there's so much urgency on so many levels.
Yeah.
But I love what you said. And I think it's so true. Move toward the abyss. There's always riches on the other side of it. There's always a big launch, a big leap that happens when we have the courage to tap in. I think it's because there's a child in us, to whatever degree, that when we were really young, feelings did feel like they could annihilate us, right? Like that was a real thing. That was a real thing. To shut off was a survival mechanism that served us really well. And that impulse to not feel, I think we can have compassion for that. We can empathize with where that comes from and feel the pain of why we had to shut down. That's part of it.
Yeah.
So,
So what emotion do you consistently in the past or now have the hardest time navigating, that you're still like, oof, here we go again?
That's a good question. I think for me, like the kind of anger is a big one for me. Like I love anger in the sense that it's such a pathway for me to my authenticity. So like I've learned to befriend my anger over many years, and it's still a teacher. And the reason why it is for me, and maybe this is true for a lot of other women as well, is that, my pattern was being the good girl, being the emotional caretaker for the family. And anytime that I dropped that mask, just a little bit, I would be like humiliated or withdrawn from or punished or something. So anger is such a, for us as humans, it's just something natural that comes up when there's a boundary violation or when something happens that's not okay. And my consistent pattern of the wound was every time I'm really myself and express my needs authentically or get angry, I get dropped, So learning how to show up for myself, even when other people are still not okay with their anger or with my anger. So like, I think that's my challenge now is anger in relationship, like really loving my anger and loving someone else's anger and loving ourselves through it. Like, you're angry with me and I love you.
Yes.
I'm not going to diss you. And like, there's boundaries I have, but I'm not going to like drop you out of my life because you're angry with me.
Let's talk about anger. This is so good. So good. I would love to know your thoughts on, so we have anger and our natural propensity is to react and to push that anger onto somebody else. How do we navigate anger and our righteous boundaries without, or maybe, I don't know, or maybe we can't, without that additional harm of you're bad, you're fucked up, you anger, you're to blame.
Right. So without putting it outward in a harmful way.
Yeah. But using that anger and leveraging that anger, I feel like that most people, don't know how to do that. And so the only way that we know how to manifest our anger is by blame.
I know, it's such a sad thing. I mean, I think we're moving out of it, but anger still has a pretty bad rap. And what I've seen with my clients and people I've worked with, it's like every time a woman like points her anger towards the source, like it's all about getting the anger where it really belongs and then emoting from there. So for example, someone who's like putting her anger all over her partner, the anger might be about her mother, not being able to meet her needs and having to, be alone a lot or feeling abandoned in some way. So generic example. If she can direct that deeper anger towards her mother, not necessarily talking to her mother, but in her journal or in our sessions, like really exploring what's the anger really about. When a woman can direct it there, oh my gosh, I've just seen like, it's almost like the axis of her life starts to change. Things start to get into alignment. So I think anger offers us that opportunity to get to a deep laser clarity on this kind of diffuse projection of energy that separates, and instead pulling it back into us and then putting it where it belongs, like on the the original event that caused that anger to arise. Anger that's explosive is usually anger that we haven't been able to express in the past. So we need to direct it where it really belongs and then fiercely give ourselves permission to let it out in constructive, healthy, creative ways.
Yeah.
So on my journey, I allowed myself to be as angry as I wanted to be. I told myself, I'm like, I have been suppressing anger for so long. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to hang out here for a while. I'm going to be angry and I'm going to enjoy it. And I, really got into the kind of creative ways of exploring it. I remember a period of time where I worked with, being in the good girl cage and just rattling the bars of that cage. I am so sick of being the good girl, and feeling all the tension in my body and every cell. And then okay, now what does it feel like to come outside of that cage and occupy all of my power? How do I carry my body? How do I walk around? What does it feel like to be this not good girl? So just playing with anger creatively, I think, is really the answer. And to not hold it back, to not re-shame ourselves, because this shit is legitimate. And as women, we have a lot of legitimate anger. We have a lot of rage, and we need to explore it and to support each other in exploring it. Because the other side of it is so rich and fertile. And I think female rage is like a healing elixir that we can harness, but we're just figuring out, how to do that and how to work with that.
Yeah. And I think we have so little role model of what that fruitful anger can look like. I mean, for me personally, when I used to work in the corporate world and it was run by white men and I saw them rage and I saw them yell at each other, slam desks and doors and things that I don't know how that became somehow socially acceptable, but it kind of is okay for white men to get angry. We see it on TV. We see it, in movies. That it's acceptable for white men to get angry and to yell at each other in the workplace. And yet if a woman were to do it, it would not be okay. And so that message, I think, is very deep within us, that anger is a men's thing. And women, we suppress it. We keep it inside. We put a smile on our face. And at what cost?
Oh my gosh. It's so true. It's so true. We really have to allow ourselves to work with that. And I like to think that where we're going, it's not going to be anger the way that men have projected anger and the harm and the violence that's come from their misplaced anger. I think it has to do with a fierceness, working with it, leveraging it, sitting with it, marinating in it, learning from our anger. And then, it's not about domination on the other side. We've been in this dominator model in patriarchy for so long, and we cut ourselves off from anger. And a lot of us have had angry parents, angry mothers, angry fathers. And I see that in my work too, is helping people to befriend their anger. They have to feel safe enough with it, even a little bit, just to open to it. That fierceness is exactly what we need, and what I mean by fierceness is let me back up a second. If we can feel anger about what happened to us as children and really face the magnitude of how we've suffered to whatever degree, that if done well, that turns into a fierceness and kind of an uncompromising, unapologetic, I'm not available for what I'm not worthy of. And we can make choices and speak in a different way. We can show up in a fierce way where we're not angry and lashing out at people or being oppositional for no reason. We're truly informed of our worth. And we can't be truly informed of our worth if we haven't looked at how we've been harmed. This is what I've seen from my journey. With every level that I realize my worthiness, I look back at that little girl I was and I think, I get a little rage again. I'm now that I know more of my worth, holy shit, that happened to me. And that was so not okay. So it's still not about blame, but it's more that informs how I navigate my life.
Yeah.
And what my boundaries are, so that I can truly care for myself, truly protect my precious energy, and devote my energy to only those places that really will benefit and really get it.
And I've seen that the manifestation of that is when we are angry, or when we are sad, or when we are whatever emotion we're experiencing that is deemed, negative or not happy. And someone says, "Oh, you're angry," with this dismissive tone. The response is, "Yeah, I am. Yes, I am." There's no need to defend. There's no need to charge them with why you're angry. It's just, yes, I am angry. I own my anger. I feel fully grounded that this is where I'm at right now, and this will pass, and that's okay.
It's like anger can be a laser that can really transform things. Yeah. And I think we all kind of, have to find our groove with it. It's almost like you have to feel it in your body, and I can know when I'm in a blamey or a projecty way, but then I also know when I'm in a super clear, grounded, not defensive, but fully aware of, this is not okay, or a fierce place.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this conversation. We've never talked about anger on the podcast, and I'm glad that we're talking about it because it's so important and it's so needed.
Yeah, it is. And I think as women, the models that we've had for female, the good female or the good woman or whatever, it's usually this compassionate, acquiescent, conciliatory, yielding, small. These are all the messages. So we're like writing a new script, and I think it's both. It's like we're going to be compassionate and we're going to be fierce, and we're going to hold both of those as valid. And we're the women that have to live this, right? We're like changing the culture. So we have to be willing to be like different and be misperceived and be misunderstood and not be liked. And, if we haven't faced our histories, that's really hard to do, because this whole thing about compliance and being liked and being approved of is very much something that we get as kids. There's a lot of wounding around being exiled or not being liked. And a lot of that will keep us in harmful situations if we don't really work through it.
Yeah. And what I appreciate about your work and the way that you give context, how you talk about the internal work, but also in the context of the external work, is I think many of us believe that this is just who we are. We just are people pleasers. We just need to be liked. That's just who we are. But as we do this work, we start to realize it's actually this isn't who I inherently am. Sure, I may be inherently kind and conscientious, but that doesn't mean that I'm inherently a people pleaser. This is what I've been taught. This is what I've been indoctrinated. And now it's my responsibility to look at it. So it doesn't, it's not a prison for myself anymore. And so I feel like your work does such a beautiful job in connecting that. And that's so important for us to understand that it's not our faults that we are this way. And we're not this way. We get to change that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think, there's nothing wrong with admitting that, all of us have experienced a lot of pain in our childhood to some degree, some challenges that caused us to suppress some emotional stuff and create a false self, to survive. And usually the false self is some kind of, adaptation to pain.
Yeah.
And it helps us survive, but then it is a barrier to what we really want to create. Because what we really want is to be real and to connect with people in a real way and be loved for our real selves. So at a certain point, all of us experience pain in this false self. But the real goods, the stuff that we really want to experience, is this true, unfathomable self, this self, this true self, this, the real essence of who we are is underneath all that accumulated shit. Yeah. So healing the mother wound, I really see it as kind of like a dismantling process of taking off all these layers of culture and family and the really insidious stuff with our moms. And then with each little layer we peel off, we get more access to all this genius in there that wants to come through and wants to be expressed. So I'd like to think of the mother wound as like this gateway or this portal into our true expression. And I'm talking about the authentic expression. I get a little frustrated when I look out there at the coaching world and some of the self-help stuff that's so gimmicky and instant results. And, how to change your life in 3 seconds, like I don't like that stuff at all. I'm just really like, you got to do the real stuff. That stuff is garbage. It's not really worth it. It's not going to get you anywhere.
It's not going to get you anywhere.
It makes people blame themselves more because they're like, why couldn't I do it in the 3 steps?
That was me. That was absolutely me. I had such a big wound, so much trauma from childhood that I clasped onto spirituality and the self-help to heal myself. And so much of that was good. And yet so much of that I saw was me not working, and then me blaming myself for why it's not working. Like if the law of attraction is a law and I'm, not manifesting my $1 billion tomorrow, then there must be something wrong with me. And it's so painful. It's so painful. And then we invest thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to the experts that are going to help us get the right mindset so that we can make the $1 million, so we can have a successful business, all from a good intention.
Right.
But it leads to a real dark space because it doesn't work.
It just replicates the original wound, really.
Absolutely.
So you're back in the same situation you were as a kid, and it's like, okay, now I'm really stuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm like kind of just speaking that like it takes a long time. It's a long process, but it's the real deal. It's the real, it gets you really where you want to go, and life becomes more magical and things show up,
Yeah, I hear that. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up? Anything else that you want our listeners to hear?
Yeah, I just want to share that, if you're someone who has been struggling with, some issues with your mom, or you think, some painful dynamics, or even some challenges in your life that you think might be rooted in some dynamics with your mom, I just want to, invite you to look at that and let go of any shame or guilt or self-doubt you might feel about it. And instead, just really hold yourself with compassion and give yourself permission to look into it. What were the dynamics with your mom growing up that caused you to struggle? And what are the struggles you're having now?
Yeah.
And do just some work on that, exploring in your journal or with a counselor or with friends. But there's so much richness in this exploration, and you don't have to suffer. You don't have to continue to suffer like with this for a long time, because it is a big siphon, a leak. It's a big energy leak. So when we plug this leak, there's so much energy that comes back to us. So that's what I would say.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, for being with me. I really appreciate you.
It's been really fun. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I really appreciate you.
Bethany and I had a lot of thoughts around healing the mother wound, around self-responsibility, and around anger. If you want to check out more of Bethany's work, go to www.motherwound.com. And as always, you can learn more about me and my work at www.teisky.com. Remember, doors close for Worthy Women Rise February 15th at 9 p.m. Pacific. You can go and learn more about the program at www.worthywomenrise.com. See you next week.